I'm going to start with our prelude, which is Church of the Earth by Peter Mayer, who is the same person who wrote our favorite hymn, Blue Boat Home. I hope I'm not being presumptuous in saying it's our favorite hymn.
The ceiling is high to let your soul rise up to the angels who teach you to fly. And when you're weary of clouds, it helps you back down and welcomes you home to this hallowed ground. It's gilded in gold, gilded in rust, for heaven below and heaven above. The heaven we know here in this world, here in our holy Church of the Earth. And the windows are wide, so darkness and light, mystery and beauty meet you inside. And there's room enough to hold all of us who gather in friendship
have a place for crossing the street.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I've been
Yeah.
fighting for that for years. Welcome. I have some seats here.
Yeah.
There's some seats over here.
Have some seats.
Yeah.
Oh, I sit right here in the grill.
Yeah, you can grill us.
I brought some tissues in case anyone needs tissues.
Thank you.
I got one. Good, now nobody will know who I am. You can tell them smiling or frowning.
Floating or drowning? Here we are. This is quite a crowd, both online and in person. So good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Yaakov Reef, and I am leading this morning's service. Whoever you are and wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome to worship with us, whether online via Zoom or in person. And today is kind of a miraculous thing. Those of us who are gathered here are, for many of us, the first time we're seeing each other in person in almost a year, which is really kind of awesome. Even as we are concerned with, the nature of the pandemic's evolving, the evolving nature of the pandemic. So I'm so glad that we're able to be here together. Our opening chalice lighting can be found in your order of service. If you don't have one, Barbara has some extras there. And Sarah, for those who are on Zoom, Sarah will share it online. And we're going to say the words. We're not chanting today, in part because it's not clear with how close we are that song particles won't come out from our masks, but talking seems to be okay. I'm basing that off of a friend of ours here today who is a nurse. So we'll say the words together, where it says the spiral dance. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here, one strong body. Gathered here, struggle and the power. Spirit draw near. And then we'll say the words. I'll say the L if you'll say the P. From the air of the east. And the fire of the south. From the water of the west. And the earth of the north. We kindle the sacred fire. In wisdom, love, and power. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing. Bring to us beauty, vision, and joy. And so we'll say together the affirmation of faith, which is found in our order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is the sacrament. And service is prayer. To dwell together in peace. To seek knowledge in freedom. To serve humanity in fellowship. To the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. So may it be. Opening words this morning are a reading from Braiding Sweetgrass by an excerpt from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you haven't read Braiding Sweetgrass yet, I recommend it. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I've now read it 4 times, and it has become sacred scripture for me. It is prophetic, deeply prophetic. And just to give you a background, Robin Wall Kimmerer is a member of the Potawatomi Nation. And like most of the indigenous peoples in North America, the Potawatomi Nation had been displaced and sent to Oklahoma from the Great Lakes region. And some of the folks in the Potawatomi Nation are now returning to their ancestral homelands. And among them are Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she has written this book, Braiding Sweetgrass, which is some of the deepest indigenous wisdom that I've ever been taught. And so I commend it all to you all to read. In the meantime, I'm going to read an excerpt. In our oldest stories, we are reminded that this was a question of profound concern for our ancestors. If we are fully awake, this moral question arises as we extinguish the other lives around us on our behalf. Whether we are digging wild leeks or going to the mall, how do we consume in a way that does justice to the lives that we take? When we rely deeply on other lives, there is urgency to protect them. Our ancestors, who had so few material possessions, devoted a great deal of attention to this question, while we who are drowning in possessions scarcely give it a second thought. The cultural landscape may have changed, but the conundrum has not. The need to resolve the inescapable tension between honoring life around us and taking it in order to live is part of being human. The traditional ecological knowledge of indigenous harvesters is rich in prescriptions for sustainability. They are found in native science and philosophy, in lifeways and practices, but most of all, in stories, the ones that are told to help restore balance, to locate ourselves once again in the circle. It's okay. Welcome, welcome. Gariamus Odie. So I want to share some seasonal lore. So most people who have come to this service on August 1st or close to it have heard me call it by many names. I sometimes call it August Eve, for it is the beginning of August and the August Harvest Festival. Some have heard me call it Lunasa, named for the Celtic god Lu, L-U-G-H. Some have heard it called the summer cross quarter day because it is exactly the midpoint between the summer solstice and the autumnal equinox, the fall equinox. So we are at the very midpoint now. So for those of you who are summer lovers, it's half over. By the way, for those of you who are waiting on fall, we still have halfway to go. And so it is a very special time because it gives us an opportunity to pause. All of our ancestors took opportunities to pause during the agricultural and seasonal cycles of their lives because so much of their lives were dictated by agricultural and seasonal cycles. But you know, that's also true for us. It wasn't until recently that you could, at Market Basket in Billerica, get 10 avocados for under $5. That's a recent thing. It wasn't until the last couple decades that you could get tomatoes at Market Basket that tasted good in the middle of winter. These are new things. My grandfather used to say at Christmas time, I would say, what was your favorite gift when you were growing up? He actually grew up Unitarian. I would ask him, what was your favorite gift growing up as a kid? And he said, an orange. And I said, oranges? What do you mean an orange? And he said, you couldn't get them any other time of year. It was only sold around here because they were ripe in the southern regions, and so they were shipped around the world. And so he looked forward to that orange with such glee. And so what is seasonal lore but the stories we tell one another about the changing seasons? And so, yes, in the old Celtic days, Lu was, well, we could say crucified, we could say sacrificed, and his energy would go into the fields, and the fields grew because of him. And so he sacrificed himself, and we recognize that sacrifice in the act of cutting down the wheat, in cutting down the grains, which were the first fruits, one of the first fruits. Here, right now, as you know, I work at Harold Parker State Forest, and the blueberries are plump and ready for picking. And there are blackberries ripening, and the elderberries. Now is the time to harvest the first fruits. And so, whatever tradition you come from, wherever you come from. I know that you have your own seasonal lore that comes with this time. Live into that. Those stories are the most important part of what makes all of us who we are. And you're probably never going to hear this again. I'd like us now to take a moment to meditate on this zucchini.
You're right.
I want to guide us in a meditation. You can focus on the zucchini if you want. But the zucchini, I saw it on the table this morning. So the story is the meditation. This morning, I saw this zucchini sitting on the patio table on the back porch of Jim and Brita Learn's house. And as I looked at it, I remembered that another person in our congregation, Lisa O'Connor, said, you know, it's a little late, but just in case, if you have some things that are been harvested, you should bring them for today. And I saw it and I said, oh, I'm gonna grab this. But I didn't grow this. I ate zucchinis that came from the same plants that this one came from the other day, cooked by my friend Brita in nice hot oil with onions and spices. It was delicious. How did it get there? How did this zucchini become that delicious food? How did it become this long green object with a spiny top that makes a little itch if you touch it? Of course, it came from a seedling. And that seed was planted by Brita. And they were started by Farmer Griggs. And Farmer Griggs got the seeds by seed saving, a tradition he learned from his father, Farmer Griggs, who learned it from his grandfather and grandmother, who learned it from their grandparents. And it was taught to them and brought down through the generations. And this is just a zucchini, but it's not just a zucchini. This zucchini has the love and wisdom of generations. Right here. The people who grew the food for us, who taught us how to grow food, who harvest it, and then cook it in hot oil with onions and spices. I give thanks to the zucchini and the wisdom that it imparts to us free of charge. So I'd like to invite us now. Oh, here it is. Woo! I'm not looking at the back pages of things. I'd like to invite us now into a moment of sharing our deepest joys and concerns.
So you had a hint?
So,
Yes, it's not a full one. Yes. I'd like to know.
all right. So I'm going to pull this a little closer. The sun is starting to blind us a little bit. So join me in your order of service. This is a poem by Mary Oliver called Picking Blueberries. It's a favorite. Go figure. Mary Oliver could do anything, and it would be the most amazing thing ever done. So it's called Picking Blueberries. I'm going to read the L if you'll read the P. And keep in mind, it's a poem, so it will end in your part may end before the sentence ends. That's okay. It's going to continue back and forth. And keep in mind that it's on 2 pages. Once in summer, in the blueberries, I fell asleep and woke when a deer stumbled against me.
I guess she was so busy with her own happiness, she had grown careless and was just wandering along.
Listening to the wind as she leaned down to lip up the sweetness, So there we were,
with nothing between us but a few leaves and wind's glossy voice shouting instructions.
The deer backed away finally and flung up her white tail and went floating off toward the trees.
But the moment she did that was so wide, so deep, and it lasted to this day. I have only to think of her.
The flower of her amazement and the stalled breath of her curiosity, and even the damp touch of her solicitude before she took flight.
To be absent again from this world, and alive again in another 30 years, sleepy and amazed.
Rising out of the rough weeds, listening and looking. Beautiful girl, where are you? All right. The star is bright, and it's not night. Okay. And we are not in Texas. All right. So I'm going to try to swing my head in both ways as much as possible to be as inclusive as I can to folks at home and here. My homily was inspired, as many of you have probably guessed, by my reading of Braiding Sweetgrass by Wall Kimmerer. As I said earlier, I commend this book to all of you. It is one of the best things I've ever read. For those who are new, I've read it 4 times, just joining us. I've read it 4 times now. It is deeply prophetic, and it has become a type of scripture for me. Many of you have heard me talk about scripture in many ways in the past. Robert Heinlein, the sci-fi, considered the grandfather of modern science fiction, has written extensively, and many of his works are considered scripture to me. Starhawk and the Fifth Sacred Thing is considered scripture to me. The letter from the Birmingham jail from the Reverend Martin Luther King is scripture to me. And as Unitarian Universalists, scripture can mean so many things for us. Scripture and prophecy does not have to be solely in the realm of other religions, Bibles and scriptures. That something as simple as the Mary Oliver poem has the power to be a psalm. And so Wall Kimmerer wrote the Braiding Sweetgrass some years ago, and in it there is a chapter called The Honorable Harvest. And that, listening to that chapter, so I listened, so in addition to reading it 4 times, I've also listened to the audiobook back and forth to work pretty frequently. It's if I don't want to listen to music, I listen to Braiding Sweetgrass. Her voice, she's the author herself, narrates the book, and it's magical. I don't know how else to describe it, but in listening to it, there's a chapter called The Honorable Harvest, and one day it hit me in such the right way that it felt like it had hit the deep recesses of who I am. And I thought, I want to do a service in August on this. I want my Lunasaw service to be about this. The honorable harvest. Isn't that what we're striving for? An honorable harvest. So I want to ask, and you don't have to answer, but if you have an answer that you do want to share, you may. What is an honorable harvest? Something to ponder. It's okay not to have an answer, because when Wall Kimmerer said the honorable harvest as the title of the next chapter, just the honorable harvest, I thought, what is an honorable harvest? And of course I knew I was about to hear, having read it, but I had never asked the question before. And so here we are, it's August 1st, and we're starting to experience the harvest of first fruits. Baskets are being filled with blackberries and blueberries, currants and elderberries, zucchini and tomatoes. That's if you've been getting enough sun for your tomatoes. Other fruits are harvesting too. Corn, there is local corn already. And of course, there are grain harvests. And if you're in other parts of the country, there are many other things being harvested right now as well. A little further south, There are many more types of fruits. The further north you go, there are less, and their first harvest starts happening a little bit later. And so we're living seasonally. The thing is, in addition to our baskets being full, so too are our shopping carts. Our shopping carts are quite full. They are full and they clatter across parking lots with our plastic bags being blown in the wind, rustling around, full of the things that we purchased at the store. Yes, not anymore. Thanks to Lisa O'Connor, it's paper bags in Billerica.
Curse me or love me, whatever.
And so I think to myself, how do we consider such abundance? We can get anything we want at the grocery store, except at Thanksgiving, and then it's at Alice's restaurant. So what are these things called that we're getting? Is the zucchini a commodity? Is it a natural resource? What do we call the fruits that we're harvesting if they're wild, like blueberries or blackberries? Are they ecosystem services? In Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, she says, in the indigenous worldview, we call them gifts. She says, we are showered every day with the gifts of the earth, air to breathe, fresh water, the companionship of geese and maples, and food. The friendship of geese and maples. Can trees truly be our friends? If you've ever met a Canada goose, they don't want to be my friend anyway. Okay, I get it, I'll back off. But a maple tree, is this our friend? Do they give us companionship? I say we do. We are. We're companions. We give them friendship too, if we only realize it. We lack photosynthesis. We humans cannot photosynthesize the sun. You know, we're not Orions. We don't have green skin, if you follow Star Trek. So as animals, we're destined by our biology to be dependent on the lives of plants in particular, as well as other things. The lives of others, this generosity, this deep generosity of our planet with more than human persons that we share this planet with. Robin says that if we understand the earth as just a collection of objects, then apples and the land that offers them fall outside our circle of moral consideration. She says we tell ourselves that we can use them however we please because their lives don't matter. And perhaps you're fighting that idea right now as I even say it. No, I don't do that. I'm very grateful for these things. But in the end, we don't really recognize the personhood of the maple tree or the personhood of the zucchini plant, and perhaps even the personhood of the Holstein cow that gives us milk and meat. Recognition of personhood does not mean that we won't eat them, but just that we should be accountable for the lives that we're taking in order to sustain our own. When we think of the world as family, we are now called to act in new ways, so that when we do have to take a life, we do so in such a way that brings honor to the life that we are taking to consume, to benefit our lives, and of all those who are receiving it. Kimmerer says that the canon of indigenous principles that govern the exchange of life for life is known as the honorable harvest. She says that there are rules of sorts that govern the taking from the world so rich that we have to think of the 7th generation ahead of us. That when we take from the world in order to benefit our lives, we must think of the next 7 generations. When you're picking a blueberry bush, what do you think of? That there are delicious, plump blueberries for us to enjoy? That's what I think of. But since reading this book, I now think of, will this blueberry bush be here 7 generations from now? And what can I do to make sure that what I'm harvesting is also available for the others who harvest from this bush? And so, in the words of Kimmerer, this protocol is not written down, she says, but if it were, it would look something like this. And I'm going to quote from her the protocols that she quotes. She says, ask permission of the ones whose lives you seek and abide by the answer. She gives an example. She is picking wild leeks out in the forest, and she stops and she bends down to kneel, and she takes the leeks by the hand, and she says, may I harvest you? And she pulls up the clump and shakes the dirt to discover that the bulbs are thin and papery and light, not bulbous and ready to be harvested. And she realizes the answer is no. And she replants the plant. She puts it back. And then she goes and finds another plant and asks again. This one is ready. This one says it's okay. Never take the first and never take the last. If you come across a blueberry bush, for example, and it's the only blueberry bush, don't harvest anything from it. But if there's a blueberry patch and there's hundreds of blueberry bushes, go a little further in and take from there. First, of course, asking permission. We have to remember that we aren't just picking blueberries to eat. These blueberries live for their own sake, too. They live to put those seeds into the ground that are coming from those fruits. And birds eat them, and black bears eat them, and deer eat them. We are sharing. Harvest in a way that minimizes harm. Take only what you need and leave some for others. Always, always use everything that you take. This is really important. She gives an example of meat, of hunting a deer, and after coming across the deer and thanking it for its life, making sure that the fur is used for warmth, that the skin is tanned and used for their homes, to making sure that the antlers are perhaps used for purposes, for the meat, for the bones to be used for things, and if they can't be, that they be given back to the earth, simply buried. Take only that which is given to you. Sounds like do not steal, but it's a little different. Take only that which is given to you. Share it as the earth has shared with you. Be grateful and reciprocate the gift. And the last, which I think is one that is important and ties them all together, sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever. Of course, that is indigenous wisdom, and the earth will not last forever. In 4 billion years or so, the sun is going to do this big thing and the earth isn't going to be here. But we have 4 billion years, and maybe 2 billion, but that's a very long time, you know? It's a very long time. In the meantime, we have all of life to live, and not only our lives, but the lives of people for the next 7 generations. And so even though we live in a world that's made up of gifts, we find ourselves, according to Rabbi Kimmerer, harnessed to institutions and an economy that relentlessly ask, what more can we take from Earth? And so we have to wonder, in order for there to be balance, we can't keep taking from the planet without replenishing. So perhaps we need to start asking the question, what can we give? The honorable harvest is, in the words of Kimmerer, a covenant of reciprocity between humans and the land. So that simple list might sound like a very simple a list of things to do. We're going to do these things together, right? We're going to take only what we need. We're not going to harvest more than we need. We're going to use everything we take. How many folks have put vegetables in your refrigerator veggie drawer only to throw them out 2 weeks later? I've done it. I think most of us have done that. When we do that, are we using everything we take? And that becomes a question. And when we can't eat it, you know, at some point it rots and we can't eat it. Do we throw it away in a plastic bag that then goes to a landfill? Or is there a better way? How do we give it back if we can't use it? Compost is one way. So perhaps this list of rules could be considered a way of how we pick berries. It can be considered, this is how we're going to pick the berries. Leave only what, take only what we need. Leave only what we take. Use everything we take. Leave some for others. Share and share alike. But our economy is based on an economy of exploitation. That natural resources are simply that, resources. There are resources. A resource is not a gift. We can't see a resource and a gift in the same thing, because a resource is something that's ours. It's ours automatically, but it's not ours automatically. It is an available thing. It is an available food that is not just for us. It's not our natural resource. It is something that's available to all who pass by it, bird or squirrel alike. And while we remained in this kind of dishonorable harvest of take and take, and a sort of consumerist society where that's basically what we're supposed to do. We make money, and we go and we spend our money, and we bring the things home that we got with our money, and if it's not food, it sits at home. And if it is food, it might sit in the drawer until it's eaten, and it may get eaten. We as Americans waste about half of our food every year. It's about 50% of our food is wasted every year. And I think about the several hundred families that come to our food pantry, and that's just Billerica. And how we need a new system, an honorable harvest. Either collectively, either by our own permission or just by apathy, by not doing anything about it. All of us have chosen to live by these policies, bless you. But we can choose again, because as the big species on this planet that has the capacity to choose, to make choices, to decide on choices, we have the ability to choose again. And so what if the honorable harvest were the rule that we all lived by? And humans, not just plants and animals, fulfilled their own purpose of supporting the lives of others. What would the world look like? In the words of Rabbi Kimmerer, what would the world look like if a developer poised to convert a meadow to a shopping mall had first to ask permission of the meadowlarks and the goldenrod and abide by their answer? What if we filled our shopping baskets with only that which is needed and give something back in return? So how do we reciprocate what we get from Earth? Well, gratitude, thanksgiving, a celebration of the harvest, in ceremony, through acts of practical reverence and land stewardship, in defense of these places like Warren Manning State Forest and Gilgrig's Farm, in fierce defense of love, in art, in science, of love, of song, of gardens, of children, of ballots, of stories of renewal, in creative resistance, in how we spend our money and our precious lives, by refusing to be complicit with the forces of ecological destruction. Whatever each of us can give, we are called to give it so that we can dance, in the words of Wall Kimmerer, for the renewal of the world. And so I ask, as we celebrate the harvest of first fruits today, what do you have to give for an honorable harvest? So may it be. So I'd like to give us all a moment to just think again on this zucchini, if you remember the zucchini meditation. There are other fruits at the end down there you can focus on as well. But I just want to give us a moment of silence to just send our own gift of gratitude. We can think of the farmers that produced these things or the people who picked these things. We can thank the supermarkets where we purchased them if you purchased things. Anything that you want to give gratitude to, we're going to take a moment of silence for us to express an internal gratitude. And then we'll say together a prayer for peace. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. So may it be. So join me in the prayer for peace, which you can find in your order of service or on your screen if you're Zooming with us. Our hands will work for peace and justice. Our hands will work to heal the land. Gather round the harvest table. Let us feast and bless the land. And so we'll extinguish the chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And so, the postlude is for the earth forever turning. I'm going to pull that up. And then afterward, we'll do some conversation and chatting.